Well, as you know, I have a radio show. I've had the Indian River Lagoon people. I've had Vince and Lisa on my show. I have donated personally to the lagoon. I've changed my behavior. I've changed the behaviors of people around me. I actually listen to my husband, who is a recycling and environmental. He just loved the environment. I find myself thinking twice when I go to a restaurant. I won't use a straw. I turn off lights. I find myself recycling. I find myself not using as many plastic cups and plates when I have a party. I wash my dishes or I load up the dishwasher. So I find that human behavior is what it takes to change the way we think about the environment. And I've done that. And I've also tried on places of employment to tell, my friends who are nurses or physicians, that sometimes we have to look at our workplace as well. We have to make sure that the dressings we're putting on patients, we have to talk about recycling at work. It takes nothing to put your soda can in your car and bring it home if you don't have a recyclable bin at work. So I think human behavior affects the change around us, and that's what I've done.
What I've personally done to help the lagoon is something that I think a lot about, and it's a bittersweet because I've given my life to helping the lagoon. I grew up here. I remember when the lagoon was pristine. I am completely heartbroken at what's happening. From the early 80s and mid 80s, where I worked very hard to support the Environmental Lands Program to acquire more land, to try to buy land that is fragile in nature, and development would have a very adverse effect on the lagoon. The Beach and Riverfront Acquisition Program, a program I supported. I started the Stormwater Utility Program when I was a county commissioner. We were one of the first counties in the state to implement a stormwater utility program. I was deeply involved in growth management. As a county commissioner, we downzone our south beaches by over 10,000 units. We had height restrictions, lower densities to prevent overdevelopment of our beachfront, but also to negative impact on the environment and the estuary. I sponsored the Everglades bill with President Joe Negron, where we had the bill that we passed a couple years ago to clean up our Florida Everglades, $1 billion program. And that has a major impact on the southern ends of the Indian River Lagoon estuary, something I was deeply involved in, and preservation of the Everglades and the southern Indian River Lagoon, as well as Florida Bay, are just so critical to the quality of life that we have here in Florida. I've personally fought for more money for dredging. The number one thing we can do, and there are many things that we need to do, it's not one issue, but initially probably one of the most immediate things is get the latent muck out of our system, and dredging is important. So it's a passion I have, something I've worked on and will continue to work on. The way we need to plan to protect water quality, I think, derived from two sources. One, we have the Department of Environmental Protection and our water management districts. Those entities are charged with the authority of protecting water quality. I think we must adequately fund the DEP, and we must adequately fund the water management districts. We must hold them accountable. I think that providing them the resources to do their job is probably the singular most important way that we can protect water quality.
I think we have to invest in education and invest in science. Don't be afraid to get the folks involved or scientists who are checking the water quality for us. Invest in education and teach people that, you are what you eat, you are what you drink. Whatever goes into our water and pollutes it is what's going to come out of it. So don't be afraid to invest in science and education and get people to test the water and make sure that, we're not bucking the system. We can't have a separation where people don't believe in science. Clean water, a lot of people can't afford to buy bottled water, and we don't want them to be buying bottled waters as much either. I like drinking the tap water, and I like knowing that it's safe and it's clean, and the only way to do that is to invest in education and science. Well, I think everything starts again at home. It's local. We have to keep it local. So if I'm elected to the state legislature and I'm thinking about the lagoon, I would say, I've always had an issue with septic tanks. I think it would be great to invest in a long-term project. I think we're already doing it, but all the septic tanks should be converted to sewers. And if you explain to the public what is happening, what happens when a septic tank is leaking, the nitrogen and the phosphorus from those tanks that are going into our waters, into our rivers. If you speak with the healthcare people in Tallahassee about what's happening when you have diapers in nursing homes that are not biodegradable. I think it's all about an education. So I would sponsor bills that promote education, promote STEM learning in the schools, and also educate the public about why it's important that we not worry about the lagoon only when there's a fish kill or when the water is brown or when your eyes are turning red from algae blooms, but educate them that this is a change of behavior. It starts with all of us. And at some point, we have to say, you know what? If you go to Tallahassee and you fight for the people, think about the people. And invest as much money as it takes to invest in a lagoon. We have to do it. But it's a long-term project. It's not going to happen overnight. So people have to be patient and they have to give us a chance. I'm worried about the muck in the bottom of the lagoon. And, you know, we can't have anything growing out of there. I'm worried about people who go to restaurants and eat food, but they don't think when that food is on their plate what could be in those shrimps, what could be in the fish. So I think it's a grassroots thing. You have to educate people, get more people involved in their communities, get more people involved in boards and in where they live.
If I'm elected, I do intend on sponsoring a number of lagoon bills. I've done so in the past. First and foremost, lagoon funding and matching the dollars that are being brought down from Tallahassee. But I think we need to do more. I think we need to require or maybe empower our water management districts to more deeply be involved in lagoon management. I think we need to do more in shoreline protection. I think we need to continue to buy more land on those fragile properties that can have impact on the lagoon if they're developed. We need, I think, more comprehensive management. We've talked a lot about the management structure of the Indian River Lagoon and how do we create an entity that's responsible for the actual protection of the estuary. I think we're going to have to look at some managerial governmental roles that have to be more clearly defined to coordinate the Indian River Lagoon cleanup. And I hope to be involved in legislation that may address some of those. It's a very complex issue. How we do that is not a simple solution, but something I think has to be done to create responsibility and accountability. We have numerous jurisdictions now on the Indian River Lagoon, 156-mile long system, numerous cities and counties, water management district, DEP, the National Estuarine Program. Somehow we got to pull all that together. I think we need to look at some legislation to make that happen. My number one priority is environmental conservation. It's the environment that motivated me to originally run back in 1984 when I ran for the county commission. I've been deeply involved in environmental causes in Brevard County now for over 30 years. My number two priority is space. We are the Space Coast. I work at the Kennedy Space Center, something that I'm involved with on a day-to-day basis. And I'm excited about the direction that we're taking with a new renaissance in space. And very soon, hopefully, we'll be launching people back in space from right here on the Space Coast.
I had three, but I'll go with two. Education, which includes the environmental education as well, and the economy. I think, we want an educated society, whether we're speaking about the Indian River Lagoon, whether we're talking about academics, whether we're talking about vocational or apprentice. We want a society that's educated. And I think it doesn't matter how much money we put into programs or invest unless we invest in education. So we need to make sure that in our schools we are teaching children and parents about the lagoon, about what's happening with our environment, what's happening when you see a recyclable bin. Just don't put things from your kitchen into the recyclable bin. Look up the word recycle. Look up what it says, think green, think smart. So I think education is a big thing for me, but it starts at home, and we also have to expand it into the schools where everyone is not just thinking from the kitchen to the garbage can or the kitchen to recyclable bin, but also we're thinking about what it means to recycle and how it affects our human behavior and our environment. For the economy, when the environment is great, of course, we'll fill those hotel beds. We'll have more tourists coming. We'll have more people fishing. We'll have more restaurants buying good fish and shrimp. So I think the environment, the economy, everything is entwined. You fix one and you fix the other. Definitely. When I think about biosolids, I think about big, huge, what do you call those, pipelines, and that way you divert it away from the lagoon, away from anything that it's going to go into our bodies and interfere with our economy and interfere with our future. So yes, I would support that.
Biosolids have been a big problem, and I do support more regulation and monitoring how biosolids are distributed along the land. As a matter of fact, I've opposed efforts, and there have been efforts to do the opposite in the legislature, to make it easier for companies just to dump biosolids on farmlands. It's become a real problem, not only here along the estuary and along our lakes, but up in north, central, and northern Florida with our springs, where biosolids are being spread along a bunch of farmland that drain directly into the Floridan aquifer and into our spring watershed. We must not allow that. This biosolid issue must be addressed in a way that's rooted in science. We must, I think in all these issues, we must listen to our scientists. A lot of people talk about good science, but they never listen to the scientists. I think we must approach this from a very, very scientific method, ensure that we don't allow these methods of disbursement in a way that affect our groundwater, our estuaries, our lakes, our streams.